Pastor Ethan Cole and Officer Tamara Jenkins had a perfect wedding ceremony until everything fell apart just hours later. A respected San Francisco pastor and a decorated police officer, their union was celebrated as a match made in heaven. But on their honeymoon night, a shocking discovery changed everything. Tamara uncovered a secret that shattered her world. Confrontation turned into chaos, and within moments, a single gunshot ended Ethan's life. At first, it seemed like a tragic accident, but the investigation uncovered something much darker. Was this self-defense, or was there more to the story? This is the shocking case of a wedding that ended in murder before the honeymoon was even over. And according to Tamara's confession, the truth is even more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. Stay tuned, you won't believe what really happened that night. But before we dive in, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. The 911 call came in just after midnight. Shots fired. The Fairmont Hotel, presidential suite, possible victim down. Police and paramedics rushed to the scene. The Fairmont, one of San Francisco's most luxurious hotels, was the last place anyone expected to respond to a crime. Guests in expensive evening wear peered out of their rooms, whispering nervously as officers stormed past. Inside the suite, chaos reigned. The once pristine honeymoon suite was now a crime scene. A shattered champagne flute lay near the bed, red rose petals scattered across the floor, like a cruel reminder of the romantic evening that had turned deadly. Ethan Cole's lifeless body was slumped against the wall, a dark crimson stain spreading across his crisp white dress shirt. His eyes, once full of conviction and passion, stared blankly into the void. Officer Tamara Jenkins sat on the floor just feet away, still clutching the gun that had ended her husband's life. Her hands trembled as she whispered, "It was an accident. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to leave." As detectives entered the room, they knew this wasn't a simple case. A decorated police officer had just shot her husband, a prominent pastor, on their wedding night. But why? What could have pushed a newlywed to kill the man she had just vowed to spend the rest of her life with? Pastor Ethan Cole was a man admired by many, but truly known by few. To the thousands who gathered at Grace Community Church every Sunday, he was a beacon of faith, a leader who spoke with passion and conviction. His sermons about hope, redemption, and moral integrity resonated with his congregation. They saw him as a man of God, a spiritual guide who lived by the very principles he preached. But behind the pulpit, Ethan carried a secret so heavy that it shaped every decision he made. His career, his relationships, even his marriage. Ethan was born and raised in a deeply religious household in San Francisco. His parents, Richard and Marilyn Cole, were devout Christians who instilled in him the importance of faith, discipline, and obedience to God's word. His father was an elder at their church, a stern man who believed in strict biblical teachings. His mother, though gentler, upheld the same values. From an early age, Ethan was taught that anything outside of the church's teachings was sinful, and that included his own desires. By the time Ethan reached his teenage years, he began to realize something about himself that terrified him. He was attracted to men. But in his world, that wasn't just unusual, it was unacceptable. He prayed constantly, begging God to take away what he believed was a flaw. He threw himself into church activities, hoping that if he devoted himself completely to God, his feelings would disappear. He became a youth leader, then a minister, and by the time he was in his 20s, he was already on the path to becoming a pastor. Ethan's rise in the church was swift. His ability to connect with people made him one of the most beloved figures in the religious community. He had a way of making every sermon feel personal, as if he were speaking directly to each member of the congregation. He wasn't just a preacher. He was a mentor, a counselor, a role model. His influence extended beyond the walls of Grace Community Church. He spoke at conferences, led charity programs, and was even featured in local news segments about faith and leadership. But despite all his success, Ethan lived in constant fear. Fear that if anyone found out the truth, everything he had built would come crashing down. He had seen what happened to others who had been exposed, ostracized, condemned, cast aside by the very people they had once called family. He couldn't let that happen to him. As he entered his 30s, the pressure to settle down grew stronger. Church elders began to hint that a man of his position should have a wife. Some even suggested that his lack of romantic involvement raised questions. Ethan knew what they were really asking. Why hadn't he found a woman yet? The murmurs started to spread, quiet whispers that, if left unchecked, could turn into full-blown accusations. So he made a choice. A calculated, strategic decision to protect himself. When he met Officer Tamara Jenkins at a church event, everything seemed to fall into place. She was strong, respected, and shared his faith. To the outside world, they were the perfect couple. Two public figures dedicated to their community, united by their belief in God. Their relationship progressed quickly, and within months, they were engaged. To Ethan, this wasn't about love. It was about survival. He convinced himself that he could make the marriage work, that with time he could suppress his desires, that he could be the husband Tamara deserved. But deep down, he knew the truth. He was living a lie, and sooner or later, the truth would catch up to him. And it did. On their wedding night, Officer Tamara Jenkins had spent her entire life fighting for justice. She was a woman of discipline, resilience, and unshakable determination. From the outside, she was everything a strong, independent woman should be, fierce, intelligent, and devoted to her career. But beneath the badge and the tough exterior was a woman who longed for something deeper: love, stability, and a partnership built on trust. When she met Pastor Ethan Cole, she thought she had finally found it. Tamara was born and raised in Oakland, California. She came from a working-class family where life was anything but easy. Her father, a former Marine, was strict but loving, teaching her the value of hard work and discipline. Her mother, a schoolteacher, instilled in her the importance of education and perseverance. Tamara learned early on that she had to be strong to survive. Growing up in a rough neighborhood, she saw firsthand the consequences of crime, violence, and broken families. Many of her childhood friends fell into gangs. Some never made it past their teenage years, but Tamara refused to let her environment define her. She was determined to rise above it, to make a difference. That's what led her to law enforcement. At the age of 22, she joined the San Francisco Police Department, quickly earning a reputation as one of the most fearless officers on the force. She wasn't just tough, she was smart, methodical, and deeply committed to protecting her community. Over the years, she worked her way up the ranks, gaining respect from colleagues and superiors alike. But with success came sacrifices. Her job was demanding, both physically and emotionally. She worked long hours, dealt with high-stress situations daily, and had little time for a personal life. Relationships never lasted. Most men either felt intimidated by her or couldn't handle the unpredictability of her schedule. The few times she let her guard down, she ended up hurt. By the time she reached her mid-30s, Tamara had started to wonder if she would ever find someone who truly understood her. Someone who would see beyond the badge and recognize the woman underneath. That's when she met Pastor Ethan Cole. It was at a community outreach event hosted by Grace Community Church, where Ethan was speaking about faith and resilience. Tamara had attended as part of a police initiative to strengthen relationships with local churches. She wasn't particularly religious, but something about Ethan's words captivated her. He spoke with such conviction, such warmth, that she found herself drawn to him. After the event, Ethan approached her, thanking her for the work she did in the community. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, and for the first time in a long while, Tamara felt a genuine connection. Ethan was kind, respectful, and shared her passion for helping others. He made her feel seen in a way no one else had. Their relationship moved quickly. Ethan was everything she had hoped for in a partner, steady, compassionate, and deeply committed to his values. He treated her with a level of care and understanding that she had never experienced before. When he proposed, she didn't hesitate. She believed in him, in the life they were building together. But what Tamara didn't know was that her perfect love story was built on a lie. Ethan had never truly loved her, not in the way she loved him. She was a shield. A carefully chosen piece in a game of deception he had been playing for years. While she saw a future filled with love and devotion, Ethan saw a way to protect himself from the truth he had been running from. The signs had been there, subtle but present. The way he always kept an emotional distance, even in their most intimate moments. The way he seemed hesitant about physical affection, offering only what was necessary to maintain the illusion. The way he avoided deep conversations about their future, brushing off her concerns with vague reassurances. But Tamara, blinded by love and trust, ignored the warning signs. She believed that their love was real. She believed that she had finally found a man who was as committed to her as she was to him. She had no idea that on their wedding night, the truth would unravel in the most devastating way possible. The man she had promised to spend her life with wasn't the man she thought he was. And by the time she realized it, it was already too late. The wedding was nothing short of magical. A grand ceremony in a beautifully decorated cathedral, filled with friends, family, and members of Grace Community Church. The soft glow of candlelight flickered against the stained glass windows, casting a warm, golden hue over the congregation. Every pew was packed with people eager to witness the union of Pastor Ethan Cole and Officer Tamara Jenkins, a match that seemed perfect in every way. Ethan stood at the altar, dressed in a crisp black tuxedo, his usual calm demeanor slightly shaken by nerves. He glanced around the room, locking eyes with familiar faces, church elders, lawn friends, and devoted members of his congregation. To them, he was more than just a pastor. He was a guide, a man of faith, someone they looked up to. Today, they were here to celebrate his new journey as a husband. Then, the music changed. All eyes turned toward the entrance as Tamara stepped forward. Dressed in an elegant white gown that hugged her athletic frame, she was breathtaking. Her hair was styled in soft curls, a delicate veil cascading down her back. But it was her expression, proud, confident yet filled with raw emotion, that made her unforgettable. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. Tamara was everything he could have wanted in a wife, if only he had wanted one. As she walked toward him, smiling brightly, Ethan forced himself to return the expression. He reached out, taking her hand in his as she joined him at the altar. Their vows were exchanged, heartfelt promises of love, commitment, and faithfulness. Tamara's voice was steady, unwavering. She meant every word. Ethan's voice, however, had the slightest tremor. He was lying. The applause, the cheers, the joyous celebration that followed, it all felt surreal to him. Guests gathered at the reception hall, where laughter and music filled the air. Tamara and Ethan shared their first dance as husband and wife, swaying gently to a soft melody. Photographers captured every moment, the smiles, the embraces, the stolen glances. To everyone watching, they looked like a couple deeply in love. Tamara felt happiness unlike anything she had ever known. Ethan felt trapped. As the night wore on, the exhaustion of the day set in. Guests slowly began to leave, offering their congratulations one last time. Tamara and Ethan finally made their way to their honeymoon suite, a luxurious room in an upscale hotel overlooking the city. The moment the door closed behind them, an uncomfortable silence filled the space. Tamara kicked off her heels, sighing with relief as she stretched her arms. "I still can't believe we're finally married," she said with a soft smile, walking toward Ethan. "It feels like a dream." Ethan nodded, forcing a chuckle. "Yeah, a dream." He turned away, loosening his tie, pretending to be preoccupied with his cufflinks. His mind was racing. This was it. The part of the marriage he had been dreading. Tamara, unaware of his inner turmoil, wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her head against his back. "I love you, Ethan," she murmured. Ethan stiffened. The words stung because he knew he couldn't say them back, not truthfully. But he had come too far to back out now. "I love you too," he said, barely above a whisper. Tamara pulled away, smiling. "I'm going to freshen up," she said, disappearing into the bathroom. Ethan exhaled deeply, rubbing his face with both hands. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Out of habit, he pulled it out and glanced at the screen. A message. He quickly unlocked it, his breath hitching in his throat when he saw who it was from. "I miss you. Are you okay?" Panic surged through him. He deleted the message immediately. What was he thinking? Why hadn't he turned off his phone? He had been so careful for years, making sure no one would ever find out. He heard the water running in the bathroom. He had a few minutes. Quickly, he placed the phone on the nightstand and walked toward the mirror, staring at his reflection. This was his life now. A husband, a respected pastor, a man of God, but also a fraud. Tamara's voice snapped him out of his thoughts. "Ethan, can you grab my lotion from my bag?" she called from inside the bathroom. "Yeah, sure," he replied. Turning toward her suitcase, he unzipped the side pocket, searching for the bottle when something caught his eye. His phone screen was on. Tamara was holding it, and her face had gone pale. Ethan froze. Tamara looked up at him, her eyes wide, her hands shaking. Tears welled up in her eyes as she whispered, "What is this?" Before we continue, let me know in the comments, how would you handle a betrayal like this? And if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Ethan stood frozen, his heart pounding as he watched Tamara gripping his phone, her body trembling. The screen was still lit, paused on an intimate video, him and Jason, naked, together. His worst fear had just come true. Tamara's breaths were ragged, uneven. She felt like the air had been sucked out of her lungs. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was her entire world crumbling in real time. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then in a hollow voice she whispered, "How long?" Ethan swallowed hard. "Tamara." "How long?" she repeated, louder this time, her voice shaking. He couldn't lie. Not now. Not after she had seen everything. "Years," he finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Tamara let out a bitter laugh, but there was no humor in it, only pain. Years, she repeated, shaking her head. So all this time, you let me believe we had something real. Ethan exhaled sharply, raking a hand through his hair. I wanted to tell you. No, you didn't. Tamara's voice was raw, laced with betrayal. If you wanted to tell me, you would have. You let me fall in love with a lie. You let me marry you today knowing the truth. Ethan took a step closer, his hands raised in a silent plea. Tamara, please, just listen. Don't, she snapped, stepping back. She felt like she was drowning, like the walls were closing in around her. The man she thought she knew, the man she had just promised to spend the rest of her life with, had never even existed. She took a shaky breath, trying to steady herself. I can't do this. Ethan's heart clenched. Tamara, wait. But she wasn't listening. She turned away, heading straight for her suitcase. Her hands moved quickly as she grabbed her clothes, yanking them from their neatly folded places and stuffing them back in. Tamara, just talk to me, Ethan begged. Don't leave like this. She didn't answer. She was already pulling on her jeans, her movements stiff and jerky, her fingers shaking as she buttoned them. Tamara, please. Ethan tried again, desperation creeping into his voice. She yanked a sweater over her head and turned to face him, her eyes cold. Move. Ethan didn't move. Instead, he stepped in front of the door, blocking her path. Tamara's jaw tightened. Ethan, she warned, her voice dangerously low. You're not thinking straight, he said, his voice calmer now. You just found out, you're upset. But please, don't leave like this. Tamara clenched her fists. Move out of my way. Ethan shook his head. Not until we talk. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. Ethan, if you don't move, I will make you move. Just let me explain, he pleaded. But Tamara was done listening. She tried to push past him, but Ethan grabbed her arm, stopping her. Tamara, please. She jerked her arm back. Don't touch me. She shoved him, hard. Ethan stumbled but didn't let go. Instead, he pushed back, a quick, frustrated movement. Tamara lost her balance. She fell backward, hitting the floor with a sharp gasp. The room spun for a second, and then her hand instinctively reached for her gun. Years of police training kicked in. She wasn't just a betrayed wife in that moment. She was an officer, reacting to a perceived threat. Her fingers wrapped around the cold metal of her firearm, and in one swift motion, she pulled it from her holster. Ethan's eyes widened. Tamara, no. But it was too late. He lunged at her, grabbing for the gun. Tamara held on tight, her grip firm. Let go, Ethan, she yelled. But Ethan was panicking. His hands scrambled over hers, trying to wrestle the weapon away. They struggled. A chaotic, desperate fight. Ethan was stronger, but Tamara was trained. The gun twisted between them as they stumbled across the room, knocking into the dresser, the nightstand. The lamp crashed to the floor, shattering on impact. Stop, Tamara screamed, trying to shove him away. Ethan gritted his teeth. Just give me the damn gun! Then, bang, the gunshot exploded through the room. Ethan's body jerked violently. His grip on the gun loosened. Tamara gasped. For a moment, neither of them moved. Ethan swayed slightly. Then, slowly, he looked down. A dark crimson stain spread across his white dress shirt. His lips parted as if he wanted to speak, but no words came out. His knees buckled, and he collapsed onto the floor. Tamara's breath hitched. The gun slipped from her fingers, clattering onto the hardwood. She stood there, frozen, her entire body trembling. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. Blood pooled beneath Ethan's still body. Tamara's vision blurred. Her breaths came in short, shallow gasps. And then, in a shaky, broken whisper, she said, "Oh my God, what have I done?" The nightmare was only beginning. The hotel room was a crime scene. The once pristine honeymoon suite was now covered in chaos. A broken lamp, overturned furniture, and, at the center of it all, Pastor Ethan Cole lying motionless in a pool of his own blood. Tamara stood frozen, staring at his lifeless body. Her hands trembled, her breathing came in sharp gasps. The metallic scent of blood filled the air, mixing with the lingering traces of cologne and the floral fragrance of their wedding. Her heart pounded violently in her chest. She could hear her own pulse in her ears. What had she done? Her training kicked in. She had to call for help. With shaking fingers, she reached for her phone and dialed 911. The moment the dispatcher answered, the reality of what had just happened hit her like a freight train. "This is Officer Tamara Jenkins," she choked out, her voice uneven. I just shot my husband." The words felt unreal even as she spoke them. The dispatcher's voice remained calm and professional. "Ma'am, are you in danger?" Tamara's eyes flicked back to Ethan's unmoving body. "No," she whispered. "Is he breathing?" Her throat tightened. She already knew the answer, but still she dropped her knees beside him. She placed a trembling hand on his chest. Nothing. No rise and fall. No heartbeat beneath her palm. "He's gone," she murmured. The dispatcher continued asking questions, but Tamara barely heard them. Her vision blurred, her mind clouded. She just sat there, staring at Ethan's face, the man she had loved, the man she had married, just hours ago. Now, he was dead, and she was the one who pulled the trigger. The police arrive. When the first officers arrived on the scene, Tamara was still on the floor, her body stiff, her eyes vacant. She barely reacted when her colleagues rushed in, their guns drawn, their voices sharp and commanding. Hands where we can see them. Slowly, she raised her hands. She felt detached, as if she were watching everything unfold from outside her own body. One of the officers recognized her immediately. "Tamara?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. They moved in cautiously, securing the scene. Ethan's body was examined, but it was clear he was already gone. A female officer approached Tamara carefully. "Jenkins, we need to take you in." Tamara simply nodded. She didn't resist as they pulled her to her feet, read her rights, and placed cold steel cuffs around her wrists. As they led her out of the hotel, the hallway was eerily silent. Guests peeked out of their rooms, whispering amongst themselves. Word was already spreading. A pastor shot dead by his police officer wife. It was only a matter of time before the world knew. The scandal erupts. By the next morning, the story had exploded. News outlets ran with the headline, "Police officer kills pastor husband on their wedding night." Social media was on fire with speculation. Was it self-defense? A crime of passion? A hidden past finally exposed? But one shocking detail took over the conversation. The revelation that Pastor Ethan Cole was secretly involved with another man. Someone had leaked the video. The same intimate footage Tamara had seen on his phone was now circulating online. In the video, Ethan and Jason could be seen together, undeniable proof of his secret life. The news spread like wildfire. A well-respected pastor, a man who had preached against sin, against deception, was living a double life. The betrayal, the hypocrisy, the tragic ending, it was a scandal unlike any other. Members of Ethan's church were devastated. Some refused to believe it. Others were angry, claiming Tamara had no right to take his life. Tamara, once a highly respected officer, was now the center of controversy. Some saw her as a heartbroken woman pushed to the edge. Others saw her as a cold-blooded killer. As she sat in her holding cell, waiting for what came next, the world outside continued to dissect her story. But one thing was certain. This case was far from over. The courtroom was packed when Tamara's trial began. Cameras flashed, reporters filled every seat, the nation was watching. The prosecution painted a damning picture, a jealous wife who snapped when she learned the truth about her husband. She didn't just shoot him, the prosecutor argued. She made a choice. She let her emotions take over, and now a man is dead. But the defense fought back. This wasn't about jealousy, her lawyer countered. This was a woman who was deceived, cornered, and afraid for her life. A trained police officer who reacted when she felt threatened. The jury listened as experts broke down the details of the struggle. They reviewed the footage from the hotel security cameras, showing Tamara trying to leave before Ethan blocked her path. They listened to forensic analysts explain the close-range gunshot, supporting her claim that it happened during a struggle. And finally, they heard Tamara's own testimony. She spoke about the betrayal, the confrontation, and the moment she felt she had no way out. "I never wanted to hurt him," she said, her voice breaking. "I just wanted to leave." The jury deliberated for hours. In the end, they found her guilty, but not of murder. Tamara was convicted of manslaughter. The judge acknowledged the emotional turmoil, the self-defense claim, and the heat of the moment, but ultimately ruled that Ethan's death could have been avoided. Her sentence, 3 years in prison. As Tamara was led away in handcuffs once more, the media swarmed. Some people were outraged, saying 3 years wasn't enough. Others believed she shouldn't have been convicted at all. Ethan's funeral was held in a packed church, though many struggled with the reality of his secret life. His reputation was forever changed. Tamara would spend the next 3 years behind bars, replaying that night over and over in her mind. 2 lives were destroyed that night, one by a bullet, the other by betrayal. Tamara Jenkins had once been a rising star in law enforcement, a woman dedicated to justice. Now she was an inmate, serving time for a crime she never imagined committing. Pastor Ethan Cole, a respected spiritual leader, had built his reputation on faith and morality. But behind closed doors, he had lived a life filled with secrets. In the end, his deception not only cost him his marriage, it cost him his life. But one question would always remain. If Ethan had just told the truth, would he still be alive? What do you think? Did Tamara deserve her sentence, or was she punished for defending herself? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.